Hey guys, the Explorer 4 here, Horrorboy 465, aka Nate Murphy. Welcome back to some more reviews, and today we're getting to a review that has probably been long overdue. I remember back when this movie came out and the hype was going on for it. I didn't review it, so it's been overdue. Almost a year. This came out in October of last year, about to be October in a few months, but I was almost a year late. But today we're talking about Cult of Chucky, which came out in 2017. It's a 5.1 on IMDb. I believe that's the second lowest rated film of the series because Sea of Chucky thankfully has a 4.9. But this movie is better than Sea of Chucky. How much better? I don't know, but it's better than Sea of Chucky. I can say that right now. Sea of Chucky is the worst Chucky movie. And I know that people like that movie, but I hate to say it, but Curse and Cult are both miles better than Seed. But the last movie that I reviewed was Curse of Chucky. It was a couple of, I don't know if it was last year, if it was a couple months ago, or so, it couldn't have been a couple months ago. It was a while ago. I'm going to go on a limb and say it was a year ago when I did reviews on the Child's Play review films. I did reviews on every single movie from Child's Play 1 to Curse of Chucky. I also did a discussion with Steve. I don't remember if Gideon or John was on them, but I do know Steve was in them. So we did a Child's Play discussion. They gave their opinions on the movies as well. So we've covered the Child's Play movies a lot on this channel. I don't know if I did a ranking yet, but that's probably the only thing I'll have to do is just do commentaries and rankings and stuff like that. But for right now, this is the last Chucky review, and it was a movie that I was kind of just looking through Netflix because I do have some franchises lined up for a couple of franchise reviews I was wanting to do later on, but I figured I would cover a couple of movies in between that. And this is one of the movies that I see on Netflix, and I was like, well, I've talked about all the Chucky movies. It's good to get the series closure. I doubt this is the last Chucky movie unless it didn't do well. I'm not too sure. But, you know, I'm kind of honestly afraid of where they're going to go after this movie, with this movie's ending. Which, by the way, spoiler alert, this will be a spoiler review. Okay? Good? Spoiler review. So we're going to be getting into some spoilers in this review. If you haven't seen Cold Chucky yet, you know, leave, come back, continue the review. But this movie, going into it, it's weird because if this was not a Chucky movie, I think I would have thought this movie was really awesome. Because I'm a sucker for asylum movies. I think the idea of being in an asylum is a pretty creepy idea. So I'm a freaking sucker for those ideas. Why that new X-Men movie that's coming out? I can't remember what it's called, but the new X-Men movie that's coming out that has an asylum. I might be a sucker for that as well. But I was also a really big fan of American Horror Story Season 2. I'm also just a really big fan of movies that take place in asylums or abandoned asylums, like Brave Encounters. I love that movie. Um, so the asylum aspect of this movie, I was really behind because I thought it had a great mood to it. And I will say this, out of all the Chucky movies, this is probably the best visual Chucky movie out of pretty much all of them. I think that the first movie does beat it in some of the atmosphere of the city and stuff like that. But here it's a much more focus on visuals, atmosphere, lighting, and I thought they really nailed that in this movie. And that's one thing I say they really did good in this movie. And I think the guy who did the cinematography for this movie also did Curse of Chucky, which also had some pretty good cinematography. And he did something else too. He did another movie that I remember talking about and saying it had good cinematography. I think it was Wrong Turn 4 is what he did. I think he did do Wrong Turn 4, cinematographer. So those are all movies that I said that have great atmospheres and have great looks to them. So this cinematographer definitely knows how to film a great horror film. I mean, every movie he's done that I've seen so far has had, you know, really great atmospheres to them. So atmosphere and lighting and direction, I think this is probably the best directed movie from Don Mancini out of his three movies. Of course, Sea of Chucky being the worst. But out of all of his Chucky movies, this is probably the most well-directed one. I think it has a great atmosphere. I like how it's still taking Chucky seriously. I like how it's not as over the top as Sea of Chucky is. Um, there's some pretty good effects in the movie. There's a lot of kills in this movie are people getting either their faces caved in or decapitated or like some really brutal kills. So those are some pretty awesome practical effects. And if they're not practical effects, they're very well done CGI effects. And like I said, I love the idea of taking place in an asylum. I do like the idea of Andy being involved in the story. I like the idea of him trying to convince these people that Fiona Dorff's character, Mika, or Nika, isn't crazy. And basically what happened after Curse of Chucky is Nika was put in this asylum, and she meets a couple people in there. She meets a guy who she actually likes and finds that he has like multi-personality disorder. And when she's in there, Andy Barkley is trying to convince the people in there that she's not crazy and that he's not crazy. And this is one of those very few Chucky movies that really takes the psychological point and runs with it. Most of them kind of hint on it. They kind of, they do touch on psychological aspects. Like, is this killer doll, like, how in the first movie where they were thinking that it was the kid who was killing people when really it was Chucky. So there have been movies before that have kind of played around with that idea. But in this movie, they really took it and ran with it. Now, sometimes it didn't work. Sometimes I was like, are they really going to go that direction, which we'll get into in a second. But sometimes, like most of the time, it did end up working very well, that whole psychological aspect. So that was very well done. And very well done, by the way, very well done. Characters. These characters are miles better than anybody in Sea of Chucky and anybody in Curse of Chucky. The only people I cared about in Curse of Chucky was Fiona Dorff and Brad Dourif, because those are the only two people in that movie I actually cared about. And I also really like the character Nika. I think she's a very unique character. And there's even moments in this movie where I swear Fiona Dorff like really nails that kind of energy that she has to what her dad can also do. Like Brad Dourif has had scenes in movies where he delivered so much energy, not just in Chucky movies, but like Halloween movies, the Rob Zombie movies. He's really good in those. He's really good in The Exorcist 3. He's really good in a lot of his work that he does. But she also has that great energy to her acting. I think that, Fiona Dorff in this movie is very well done. I think she acts very well. And she's probably the best actor in the movie, as well as Brad Dourif. Those are the two best actors. But the rest of the cast is actually still pretty good. But I swear, she captures that same energy her father does. So that's very well done in this movie. There's also shots where she looks exactly like her father. Like, it's just crazy. So, I thought that Fiona Dorff did a really good job in this movie. Brad Dourif playing Chucky, I think he does a really great job. I think delivery-wise, he nails it. I think it's just whoever wrote the script, I think it's Don Mancini wrote the script. Don Mancini, I don't know what it is, but he really struggles to write dialogue for Chucky. Some points in the movie I was like, okay, whatever, it's typical Chucky stuff, I actually really liked it. And there's just some points where Chucky says something, and he also does some Curse Chucky as well. He'll just say these lines that doesn't seem like it would be that Chucky would say. And like I said, it's not Brad Dourif's fault. Brad Dourif is great in this series. Brad Dourif and maybe a couple other things about Sea of Chucky are the only things good about that movie. And then Curse of Chucky, I thought that Brad Dourif nailed it. I just thought that, like I said, Don Mancini doesn't really know how to write dialogue for Chucky. I don't know if he wrote dialogue for Chucky in the first Child's Play, which was done very well, but here in these newer movies, it's not Brad Dourif's fault, but Don Mancini needs to know how to write stuff for Chucky, because sometimes Chucky would be saying things that I wouldn't see Chucky saying. You know, there's some dialogue in this movie that I didn't really think Chucky would say. And I think that when you look at this movie, it's the most bizarre Chucky movie ever. And if they make a sequel to this movie, it'll be probably just as bizarre or maybe even more bizarre. Because this is the most different Chucky movie we've ever gotten. Um, I know people don't like part 3, people don't like part 2 even, people don't like Bride of Chucky or Sea of Chucky. I can have fun with most of those movies, but this is the most like different kind of Chucky movie ever. And I think that if you took Chucky out, it'd be a perfect horror film. It has psychological aspects, suspense. It has that dark atmosphere. Has a great score to it. Has some really great direction. Has good characters, a good story. But when you put this as a Chucky movie, it kind of devalues that because looking at previous Chucky movies, this one is just the most bizarre way you can go for a Chucky movie. And we've seen some pretty bizarre stuff. I mean, we had Sea of Chucky, where Chucky's son is both, well, consider himself a male and a female, Glenn and Glenda, this split personality thing. And you had all that craziness going on with that movie. You had Bride of Chucky, where Chucky gets a bride. Like, this series has took some bizarre turns before. But this is the most bizarre way that Chucky could go that I could ever think of. So basically, like I said, it takes place right after Curse of Chucky. Nika is taken into an asylum, and she finds out that her sister maybe was put in an orphanage or whatever. And while she's there, she basically admits that, yeah, she was the one who killed the people, and pretty much let the mental asylum get to her and made her think that she was really the killer. And while she's there, she meets some characters. Like I said, the multi-personality guy who has multiple personalities. You have one girl who thinks that one Chucky doll is their baby. One girl who burned her house down, I think. Another girl who says that she's dead, but she's really not. And you know what? Like I said, this cast is way better than anybody in Sea of Chucky and anybody in Curse, besides Fiona and Brad Dourif. Everybody else in Curse of Chucky was pretty bad, honestly. But this cast is pretty interesting because the acting is pretty good, the characters are intriguing. I like the character that Nika becomes friends with, kind of the orderly person who, at the beginning of the movie, is kind of, they got dialogue back and forth, which is pretty good. Also, the doctor guy, he's a very just slime bag character where he pretty much is like using his patients for like pleasures and stuff like that. Very disgusting individual. And I like that scene where Chucky kind of knocks him out. And he's like, "Geez, I don't know who's worse, me or him." It's just a pretty good dialogue scene for Chucky. And Chucky in this movie is decent. The animatronics are pretty good. They're decent. Nothing compared to the first, 3 or 4 movies, but still, for being direct-to-video, I think it is direct-to-video. I don't know if it went to theaters or not, but for being the budget it had, which I assume was not much, the puppeteering was pretty good for this movie. And while she's there, she starts seeing Chucky again. Chucky starts murdering some people. You got a psychological aspect where people are wondering, is it her, or is it this, or is it that? And there's parts of the movie where you're wondering if Chucky's even real. And Chucky even asks Andy Barclay, who's trying to help this girl, Nika, in the asylum. He's trying to help her out. And Alex Vincent coming back to play Andy Barclay is pretty good. Sometimes his acting can be kind of a little bit off, but honestly, it's pretty good seeing him back in this movie again. I think he did pretty much everything he could to be Andy Barclay in this movie. And like I said, there's just murders going on in the asylum where, one girl, Chucky, breaks this glass ceiling, and it's a really good shot where the glass falls in slow-mo and kind of decapitates her. And it's a pretty bloody and gory death scene, but that was pretty good. There's also the doctor character. I think he gets killed. One girl gets her tongue ripped out. Another guy gets pretty much, the multi-personality guy gets stabbed in the freaking eye. Crazy death scene. And what Don Mancini does with these newer movies, I noticed, is that he has a very good flow all the way up to the end. And then the endings to these movies are some of the worst endings in Child's Play movie like history, because it's like you got this good story going on, you got the psychological aspect, you got it going through. You know, Nika wondering, is it really her? Is Chucky really real? I like these new aspects they bring to the story. And then the ending is just horrendous, because then Chucky, I mean, at first I hated the idea of Chucky basically being able to branch his soul to other Chucky dolls, but honestly, the more I think about it, it's a pretty good idea. I have to say that's pretty creative. I actually really like the idea of Chucky pretty much making this cult, which on paper it sounds dumb as heck, but somehow, some way, it convinced me that it worked. And I think if you see the movie, you can probably see what I'm talking about. I think it works for what it is, but it is what it is. But I like the idea of Chucky being able to transfer his soul to these dolls and basically make a cult. But the ending, man, the ending is just so bonkers and out of this freaking world. Because Nika gets, Chucky possesses her. I guess the original Chucky. At this point, I don't know what the freak is going on with Chucky, because somehow Andy Barkley has a head of Chucky from Curse of Chucky, but yet there's also a Chucky over here in the asylum, and then there's two Chuckies over here in the asylum, and then Andy, for some reason, I guess they kind of answer it, but he sends a third Chucky doll over to the asylum, and then he goes over and gets pretty much put in the asylum, accomplishes nothing. He's trying to help the girl, but he accomplishes nothing. He goes in there, and what happens to the Chucky doll that he made, or that he kept, which had short hair for some reason, very weird look for a Chucky doll, had really short hair. The one he sends over gets possessed. Now we have pretty much like three, I think, three Chucky dolls that are pretty much alive. And then basically what happens is one of the Chucky dolls possesses Nika. She barely fights back at all in this ending, like she did. At least in First Chucky, she fought back. She tried her best to fight back against Chucky in the first movie, not in the first movie, but from Curse of Chucky. Here, she doesn't fight back. All that happens is Chucky possesses her. She becomes Charles E. Ray, and pretty much like dressed like Charles E. Ray, talks like him, even does the Chucky laugh like him. And Theodora actually pulled this off. It could have been a dumb idea, which it really is a dumb idea, but I thought she handled it very well. She did everything she could for this script. Fiona Dourif and Brad Dourif, they both gave it their all, and they are both honestly very good in this movie. And I don't know how Fiona Dourif pulled that off. She sounded like Charles E. Ray. She even did the Chucky laugh, which sounded just like Brad Dourif, which is crazy. She looked like Brad Dourif. Like, she looks exactly like how Brad Dourif did in the first Child's Play, which is just crazy. It's awesome. It really is awesome. But it's still a dumb idea of Nika not even fighting back against Chucky, and he pretty much possesses her. Tiffany / Jennifer Tilly is still alive, and I think she's just as annoying in this movie as she is in the others. I'm not really a big fan of the character, you know. I wasn't really into the character of Tiffany, and I wasn't really a fan of when they took her and made her possess Jennifer Tilly, because it's like, well, what the frig is going on here? But you have Jennifer Tilly calling Nika, telling her about the cult. I'm like, it just sounds dumb. It sounds dumb, but it is an idea that kind of works. But man, when they have dialogue talking like that, it's like, it makes it sound so stupid. It really does. But the ending is like, you know, I guess, ends up becoming a lesbian relationship because Nika kisses her, and she's like, oh yeah, I can live with this. Tiffany does, she says that. And then they drive off. That's pretty much the end of the movie. I'm like, so Chucky kills all these people. Nika doesn't fight back. She does not fight back at all in this movie. Like, she maybe does one thing. Not even that. All she pretty much does is watch other things happening. Or she sees that something's happening, but she never fights back against Chucky. You do have some good death scenes. I like the idea of the glass ceiling breaking in slow-mo and cutting the girl's head off. Gory death scene. The idea that this one guy with split personality disorder thinks he's Charles Lee Ray, kills this one person, and Nika, who's possessed, says, "Oh, you're just a phony." And freaking the guy gets stabbed right to the eyeball. Practical effect. Very well done practical effect. The one girl gets her tongue ripped out. Kind of a really intense scene. There's also one off-screen death scene where this girl gets her wrist slit by Chucky to make it look like she committed suicide. But I don't know. The movie is definitely a very bizarre movie. And like I said, it has a great score to it. It has some really great music to it. There's some music in this movie that's very, fitting to the movie and also just sounds great. There's really good cinematography. There's really good acting, good characters, interesting story. I'm a sucker for asylum movies, so I really like that. I like the different approach to a Chucky movie, but really, if we're being honest, this shouldn't have been a Chucky movie. This should have been a whole different movie. But, I don't know. The movie's, I guess, okay at best. I would say it's down there with Curse of Chucky and Sea of Chucky as some of the more lamer movies. But, overall, it's watchable. It's okay. It does have some really good things about it, but the overall result, I think, is the main problem with this movie, is that it really does not fit a Chucky movie. And I'm really hoping is that the Chucky movies don't go the Hellraiser route, where it's like we have a script, but it doesn't really fit Hellraiser, but we're just going to make it a Hellraiser movie. And this did not fit Chucky. It just did not match the character. It did not match the franchise. But I think that if you would look at it as a normal movie without Chucky, it's got some pretty good stuff in it. But with the fact that it is a Chucky movie, it's one of the weaker ones. And it's because it's a very bizarre idea. The ending is awful. Got some really weird ideas. Characters they could have done more with, like Nika and Andy Barclay. They barely did anything in the freaking movie. You have, I don't know, just some really weird ideas, a really weird take on a Chucky movie. I will say this. I'm not really a big fan of Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, but I can say that at least it did something different. Here, same thing. I'm not really a huge fan of this movie, but it did try to do something different. I appreciate that, but I'm kind of scared to see the next Chucky movie because it's really not Chucky anymore. Because now they got like a million Chuckies and Nika, who's possessed by one of the Chuckies. And Nika was a good character. You could have done something with her. You could have had her fight back and kill the Chucky dogs and stop them. But no. Jim Fratelli is just there to escape again, to get away with stuff again. She even says that she murdered Nika's sister, and Nika doesn't get revenge on her at all. Just kind of a lame-ish movie, but it does have some redeeming qualities. Acting, storyline is definitely different, but I liked it being different. I can appreciate it being different. Some good things about it, but there are also some bad things about it. The lighting is great. Cinematography is great. Kills are pretty decent. Chucky is decent. Brad Dourif and Fiona Dourif are pretty good in this movie. But overall, it's a pretty mediocre movie. But it was an okay watch. It's not terrible. It's not awful. But it is kind of lame. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed my review for Cult of Chucky. Long overdue review, I know. But finally getting back to these reviews again. And hopefully getting able to cover some more horror movies as we get along here. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching my review on Cult of Chucky. And I'll see you guys later. Order of Horror is out. See ya.